Welcome to Zero Gravity's podcast. Today I have my good friend Ram. He is the core contributor at OpenLedger. Before we get too deep into OpenLedger, give us a brief background into yourself, and then we'll talk all about OpenLedger's mission.
Absolutely. Thanks for the introduction, Jax. Good to be here. So I'm Ram. I'm one of the core contributors of OpenLedger. I've been a crypto enthusiast for a long time. Been in the industry from 2017. Uh, but behind the scenes, always right. We started a blockchain R&D company back then, and I've been always selling this. I got paid in Bitcoin, and that's what got interested me into this overall, rabbit hole. And then started building a firm around that. Worked with a lot of enterprises, majorly a lot of Web2 enterprises, helped them migrate to Web3. Got an opportunity to work with some of these protocols that you are at like $1 billion cap right now. We were initially working with them on R&D, figuring out how the product can be and stuff. So, been through a lot of tech grind. I've been always watching the space. Been through these two cycles: 2017, which is crazy, the ICO cycle, and 2021, which was much more broader, which brought the mass into Web3. Been looking at it. Finally, wanted to get in, pull the plug, and started working on OpenLedger. And very excited about what we're building over here. So, looking at things from behind the lens now to be in front and talking about what we're doing is quite interesting. OpenLedger is something that we've been passionate about because bringing data on chain or doing something around data has always been our um, in a pursuit that we've been looking at. And I'm glad that we've been able to bring this on at this particular moment because at this moment, as you know, like crypto AI is quite big, right? Everyone is talking about crypto AI. Over the last 6 months, it's been the buzzword. AI has been the buzzword overall in the last 2 years. Every tech company is an AI company because that's inevitable, right? You have to adopt to technology or else you become absolute. So I, I think in our case as well, we wanted to shift our thoughts more on AI than just being a data company, and been putting a lot of work. And as you know, like we are a data blockchain, and if you take a look at today's market, right, any kind of AI services or AI agents that you see today, all of them are very generic. The glorified tweet bots, right? And we all of us know that this is the initial phase. It's speculative. It's fun. People just want to see an agent interacting on Twitter. It's very exciting to see that. But after a point of time, it gets boring. Even the developers of these projects know that, right? And that's the beauty of it. They don't not they know this is going to happen. But obviously, we need to introduce people to something which is very easy to understand or like people can relate and then go much more deeper. And that is what is happening in the industry. All the frameworks that build these AI agents are looking at much more serious and much more purpose driven agents. And in that case, what changes these agents, right? What makes these agents to do a certain work in a certain way is data, right? Data is one of the biggest bottleneck in the AI space. If you take a look at it, there is compute, data, and then models. OpenLedger works on the data and model layer. And for any AI services to execute well, you need to have a model which can do that work efficiently, right? There are LLMs today. Most of the agents or any kind of AI services I see today is an model that's behind, which is a large language model, and they built a service on top of it. Like, and as people call it, right, most of the servers today are ChatGPT wrappers, right? But that will change going forward. The future will be much more specific. We've seen that happen in the traditional space. We've seen products like Perplexity and all that, which uses multiple models, right? They use a generic model. They also use like a specialized model to get context onto something. We want to bring that to the traditional space and Web3 space as well, right? So today's agents, as you know, it runs on a OpenAI's model most of the time. But if we want that agent to do a particular service precisely, like for example, trading, if we wanted to go ahead and execute a particular task based on an intent that you give it to it. Participate on governance on behalf of you. The existing agents would do that, but will not do very efficiently, right? You would not be able to bet your $1 million on that. So it'll hallucinate a lot. It's a guess game. So for it to do certain things without hallucination, to execute task in a precise manner, you would need to provide it a data feed, a guidance, a knowledge base, or a model which is fine-tuned to do that particular purpose. And that's what OpenLedger enables, right? We are an infrastructure on which anyone can collect data and build specialized models, which can then power AI services and agents for that particular specialized service. So yes, so it's quite exciting times that we are in. I think we are also at the right time as we go testnet and mainnet soon because the market is picking up. Everyone is talking about AI seriously. People are learning about AI. So it's just a good time to be and excited to what we're building.
Absolutely. So we've talked a little bit about like the end consumer, like hey, the agents. A lot of times they're just GPT wrappers. They can tweet a lot. It's quite interesting. Talk to us a little bit about like Open Ledger for people that are unfamiliar. You talked a little bit about like hey, the ability to get better data and the ability to build better models. So talk to us a little bit for let's imagine somebody's never heard of Open Ledger before. Talk to us about what exactly it does, and then we can kind of walk through that AI agent example.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's just take a step back, right, for us to just make it easier for people to know about what is OpenLedger. Like, if you, as I told you, right, if you take a look at most of the models today, these are foundational models, a large language model. OpenAI has its own model, Meta has Llama, and then there are other models that is in practice, which are open source or closed source. But for people to make services, as I told, to AI services to do a certain work in a certain way, you got to take these models, think of these models to be like OSs, and build something specific on top of it, right? Which are like apps. So there is an OS, and then you build an app which does a specific task for you. So in that case, what we are building is that we need to build an infrastructure for that to happen, right? If we want to build a specialized model, it'll start with getting data for that, right? You need to get the right data so that you can build a specialized model. So what is OpenLedger providing is an infrastructure on which users, it could be devs, end user, or an organization, can use our platform to collect data. So that's the first phase, right? So it's called data nets, where people go ahead and start a topic and they start collecting data on that. And once the data is collected, think of that to be like a data repository. You go ahead and fine tune models with this data, right? Which is the second phase, where you take the raw data, you pre-process it, you clean that data with using the tools that is there in the platform, and then you fine tune a model with that. So what I mean by fine tuning a model, right? There are again a lot of models out there which are open source, which are hosted on OpenLedger, which can be accessed, and you can go ahead and train these model with this additional knowledge base or data that you collect on OpenLedger, or anyone has collected on OpenLedger and is available. Once you fine tune this model, you can make it available on OpenLedger for agents. People are building agents to use these model, using any of these frameworks that we've integrated, and then launch agents using those models. Like as people launch agents today using an OpenAI model in the background, they could still use the OpenAI model. Just think of OpenLedger to provide with additional set of models which are specialized to do a particular task. So they can plug these models into your agent as well, which executes a task much more precisely without much hallucinations. So what also we provide is that in most of the cases, it's not about just going directly to fine tune and build models. You would probably want to start something before that, right? It starts with prompt engineering, where you give the right prompts and you make the agent to perform a certain task in a certain, like where you actually tell it to do a certain things in a certain way. But again, that is not again very precise. It doesn't give the best results. So second most thing that people have been always experimenting, and we've seen this over the last 2 years in the AI space, it really worked really well is RAG, right? So use RAG, which is sort of like an additional memory, like a knowledge base. Think of it to be like a database that you attach to an application. So an additional memory that you provide with context and make the agent perform in a certain way. So you could take this data, not fine-tune models, instead decide to go ahead and provide the data as a RAG, as vectorized embeddings, and you can go ahead and use the RAG through our platform and integrate it to any agents that can be accessed using the frameworks that we have enabled in our platform. So that's what OpenLedger is like. There are three phases to us. The first phase is data collection. The second phase is model fine tuning, and then providing the model itself as an intelligence, or providing the data as a RAG as an intelligence to an agent, so that any existing model can be used, and you just plug this RAG to make the agent perform better. The third part to OpenLedger is attribution. So attribution is an important aspect over here because, like, if you take a look at any models today, I'm talking about these large language models. They all collect data. They scrape the internet, or they buy data out from people, and it's a one-time payment, right? They pay once and get the data. There is no recurring payment that happens here. But that would not work for us. Even if OpenLedger wanted to build a platform where people can submit and sell their data and people can build models, that will not really work because in our case, for a large language model, its data is important and then compute is also as equally important. Only then the model comes out. But for a specialized model, when you're giving a data feed, data is the biggest changer here. That's the most important aspects. So if you would want to have the data contributors to get rewarded constantly, so you have a continuous feed of data coming in. So how do we crack that is to figure out ways where we can reward them on a constant manner, right? So that's where attribution comes in. Uh, that's the third layer of OpenLedger. That's why it's a blockchain, right? We want to make sure that people get attributed for the data that they're providing, and the trace of this, the entire provenance of where the data is being submitted, how the data being used in a model or even as a RAG, whether the data was accessed as an intelligence by an agent, and if it was accessed, how it was accessed, right? We want to make sure that is shown on the blockchain. We attribute each and every data provider. So if a data provider's data was used to build a model and that model was inferred by an agent, based on every inference, we figure out which data provider caused that inference to happen. Who gave the biggest influence, right? Who gave the biggest impact on that particular inference? So we figure that out and we provide that weightage on chain. And using that, the model creator can get paid by these agents or any AI services, which then can be attributed back to the data providers. So that's the third layer where every data provider who is part of the system gets paid if the data was used, and they can see it on chain. They can get paid on chain, and they could know for what they're getting paid as well. And if they feel they're not being paid well, they could track it on chain and they could go ahead and challenge it as well, right? It's an open platform, and that's where we work with other players who are in building the ecosystem along with the like Eigenlayer and all that. So yeah, so these are the three aspects, right? Data contribution, model creation, and attribution. That's what makes OpenLedger the data blockchain, and we're building an OP stack. It's a layer two, and just getting into testnet right now. There are people who are building in closed beta on our platform. Happy to introduce them. We recently announced one of the players who are building on our platform called Data Bootstrap. It's a company based out of SF, and an ex Google DeepMind person. He's a very good friend. After getting to know him about building this, after getting to know what we are doing, he started working with us on this platform, and then we're excited to announce that there are more coming in. So those are examples, right? Those are some of the platforms that can be built on OpenLedger, where they use our data infrastructure to collect data and use our model infrastructure to host their models and let that access by any AI services. So like this, we would have many players building on top of us, and we want to streamline how data and the intelligence layer is handled in the Web3 space, hopefully to crack better models, better agents, and better services in the space than just hyped tweet bots.
Yeah, so I guess we'll summarize a bit of what I heard, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in any area. So it's okay. They can come in here. They can look at Hugging Face, or they can look at Llama, and then they can customize it with specific data that you guys have on the platform. And then there are several different kinds of data sets, I'm sure, And then essentially, if your data set is used in the creation of that model or the fine tuning of that model, or potentially in the RAG itself, that you are then attributed. So you're rewarded for the use of your data set. Is that about right?
Yeah, so if your data set was used in the model, and obviously if the model was used, right? It's not useful if your data was used in the model, but no one uses the model, it's not useful. So someone has to use the model. Someone has to use your data feed to use it as an inference. So if an inference happens, if someone uses it, then based on that inference, how much ever the model gets paid for, or the rack services get paid for, you get paid for that. So that's how it works.
So let's imagine, because AI agents are so in vogue right now. Let's imagine an AI agent consumer, and maybe we're just saying that, hey, the current agents, they may be just like chatbot wrappers, but talk to us a little bit about how they might use something like an OpenLedger. Is it somebody goes in, they use Eliza, they create an agent, and they can plug it into OpenLedger as a data source, as an underlying model. How do you kind of foresee that working in the future, or how does it currently work?
Yeah, so we've been having conversations with the AI agent framework DAOs and firms that is there, and we'll be actually working with someone and announcing it soon. So let's just take an example I told initially, right? So if someone wants to build a trading agent or an on-chain activity agent, let's say it just needs to go ahead and stake for you, figure out which is the best staking protocols out there, what are the best rates that is possible, and then go ahead and stake your ETH. An agent could do this. If you give it intent, it could go ahead and execute. There'll be always a human intervention. That's fine. People are who already build those kind of bots and agents. But how do you make it automated, right? How can it be completely autonomous, where you just give it the fund and then it decides where to invest and how to go about. So that's something that we are exploring and we want to build that, and we want to show this as an experiment that this is possible, right? So for that, these frameworks need to use a model so that they can build an agent using that model. And we're building a model which has knowledge of on-chain activities that have happened over the last 10 years. It has various signals that has been provided by players across the globe. It has data of various staking providers, how staking has been happening over the last couple of years and couple of more than a couple of years actually, and then it kind of figures out what is the best way to execute for you, right? Based on your need and intent and all that. So this is something that we're working on. It'll be a fun project that we will execute and showcase and actually provide a benchmark on how this particular agent which does staking and how it's much better than an agent which is built on a generic model, let's say like an OpenAI model. We would love to benchmark and show how this has made a much better decision and why it actually made that decision, and whether it was how much this one hallucinated and how much an agent that was built on top of our model hallucinated as well. We want to showcase that. So yeah, so that is one thing that we're working on, right? An agent which can go stake for you, completely autonomous, which runs on a model that is built on OpenLedger, which is a specialized model which has knowledge about on-chain activities, it has knowledge about staking, which has knowledge about various signals that is there. And this knowledge is fed to this agent and it executes something which is much more efficient than an existing agent which runs on a ChatGPT wrapper. So yes, so that's the experiment we were working on.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, and let's double click into that a little bit. So essentially, we have this finely tuned model that is trained on data sets. And so, okay, so maybe we have like staking history of the past 10 years. It's really finely tuned to on-chain activities. Then are you dynamically injecting things? Because let's say I'm looking, my agent's like, hey, I want the best APY on an Aave pool. And then you're essentially like dynamically injecting via a RAG into that finely
Yeah.
tuned model. How does that work?
So there are two aspects over here, right? So first is think of this to be like a human brain. An undergrad cannot perform something very well, but a PhD would be able to do much more better research on a particular topic, let's assume. But for him to do a research, he needs to use a research guide or he needs to search on the internet to figure out like what's the current thing that's happening. Is anyone else done this? Like what is the best practices and blah blah blah, right? So that's how a human works, right? So think of an agent to do something similar. Whatever humans did on chain, agents will replace that. And we want to mimic the very similar behavior, And the way to do that is actually train the agent with a model so that we upskill its model, its brain, to think in a certain way, and then you provide RAG to it so that it has a constant feed of the latest things that is happening. It has the knowledge base that is there. And what we also are working on is to figure out some agentic workflows, right? So this agent can actually search on the internet, figure out resources. Like we can't have everything figured over a RAG. We could figure out the best knowledge base that is there. But what if we can have this agent do certain agentic workflows so that it can execute the task much better? So these are the three ways we would make it execute, right? The model will be like the base layer, the brain behind the agent, and then the RAG will be the constant knowledge feed that will be given to it, the recent contextual knowledge. And then, it could also use other agentic workflows like searching the internet and all that to make a much better decision. So yes, that's how it works.
So when we come into something like OpenLedger, there are already defined models. How do you kind of prioritize which kind of models you finally tune yourself? Like, what are like the most common model use cases you see out there? Is it like
See,
website copy, tweets?
yeah, so in terms of like testnet, right? It's more us working with people in a closed beta manner because the product is coming out and the people who are building on top of us have reached out to us and worked with us very closely to execute this. So we've gone with the model that is suitable for them. Like, for example, most of the time it's a Llama model that is taken because it's open source and it's much more efficient to compared to any other open source model out there. And there is a lot of developer support as well. So we've taken a Llama model based on the need, the size differs, the parameters differ. That has been the go-to model that has been chosen. We've been on the other side, we've seen people who reached out to us and said that we want to use an open source model like a fee model, which is a math model that is there because they want to do something around like math, right? Using statistics and all that. So these are some of the stuff that has been going on. So most of the time it's a Llama open source model. But once we go mainnet, we'll have multiple models hosted on our platform, right? As much as open source model that we can get access to, we will host it in our platform, and people could choose any of these from the library and decide to fine tune.
So we've gone over the agents, we've gone over kind of the data attribution and the fine tuning of the models, as well as the RAG for enhancements. Talk to us a little bit about like how you get these data sets. Is it, hey, you go to other data marketplaces and you're kind of aggregating them into your marketplace, or are you guys actually helping people go out and collect the data itself?
Yeah, so there are two important aspects to the data set collection, right? As at least as of now. The first is OpenLedger is a permissionless platform. Anyone can create a topic and start collecting data on top of us. So that's the first layer, right? So it's a contract. They can create a contract, decide what is the data they want to collect. They write their own rule engine on how the data has to be contributed. The data is validated using IKLAS AVS system. So basically, an AVS operator will validate this data using this rule engine, and the data gets posted in OpenLedger, right? So that's the first one. But before that, what we're doing is we're creating like a bedrock of internet data, right? Because for every model that is created, or if you want to create a RAG, there is a considerable information that is available on the internet already. So we want to make sure that that is available in our platform. We have like a bedrock of internet data that is available. So we're using OpenLedger's nodes. These are nodes that is run by people across the globe where we use their bandwidth to consume internet data, right? So that's the first layer where we create a bedrock of fine-tuned web, which is the internet data basically. So that is available for anyone who's creating a model. They can access this, data intelligence layer is what we call it, so that they could, if they're fine-tuning a model, they don't get enough data, they could use this layer to figure out if a data is available, and they can use that to fine-tune. The second step, as I told you, or the most important aspect, is where anyone can create their data net, and they can go ahead and decide what topic they want to create it for, and then have a rule engine and then start collecting data. So these are the two ways that we've seen people do, and that's what we want to execute as well. But if someone decides to create a data net and start going out and buying data and posting on that, they could do that. It's a permissionless platform. So we want to keep it as open as possible and let people use the platform the way they want it to.
Yeah, it's a very exciting future. So talk to us because we've talked about the agents as well, and this is kind of one of the main things we've seen the AI agent meta really explode. Talk to us about where you see the future. Do you feel like everyone's going to have these like finely tuned DeFi agents where we're just going to say what we want to do, like optimize yield across a certain chain, and it will do it? Like, where do you see the future kind of going with all of this like AI on chain?
Yeah, I think AI agents on chain is an exciting meta, right? So I'm sure that DeFi space will benefit a lot from this. There'll be millions of, or even like billions of agents on chain doing certain activities. As we discussed in these conversations, we could see them trading, we could see them staking for you, we could see them maybe doing like a governance activity, right? So anything that human does today on chain, I think agents will do in the future. There will be certain aspects that categories that will be created specific for agents is what I also envision to see happening. Like for example, we've never like if you go to the traditional space, right? We've never seen a product like Perplexity before, right? So we've seen Google search. Searching on Google is different. You ask a question and then you scroll through the pages and try to figure out an answer. But Perplexity just throws it at your face, right? You have the answer right away. So I think bringing AI into a space will create categories for you. Agents are like bloated apps, right? So they're just better way to say them. So I think there'll be unique apps that will be created in the Web3 space using AI in the background. So I think we are very creative as well in Web3. So would love to see how that will turn out. So that's a new meta that might, I think, will take over the space, and not many people would realize that. So excited to see how that will turn out as well.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned the billion agents on chain because I've been of the opinion that we'll have more agents on chain than probably humans because it's
Of
so
course, yeah,
easy to spin
yeah,
them up.
yeah.
So talk to us a little bit, and I know you recently, of course, is the Zero G podcast. Talk to us a little bit about the partnership you guys have recently done with Zero G, kind of some of the motivations there.
Yeah, so the reason we wanted to partner with Zero G was like twofold. One is the compute. We wanted to get as much as access to compute as possible. We've been working with other decentralized compute organizations, and we also wanted to work with Zero G to get access to the compute because anyone who's like building models on top of us using the data they collected, we need to give them access to compute, right? So that's one of the major reasons. Another one is we wanted to work with Zero G for maximum distribution, right? So that we can use our decentralized OS to scale and have maximum distribution for our models. So those are the two reasons, and we've been knowing the team very well, Michael, and I think we've known him over more than last 1.5 years, 2 years or so. So been in the space, love what his vision towards this industry. I think he's a great you know visionary on how he wants to build a company. So been a good friend. So yeah, so two folds of reasons to work together. Michael is the third fold to that.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to see more news come out more publicly about what you guys end up doing. So, talk to us real quick about some of the upcoming milestones, developments that people can look forward to from OpenLedger.
Yes, so we've been talking about going testnet, and we actually went testnet. So we are right now in testnet, the phase one of the testnet, which is the data intelligence layer where people are using their community nodes to contribute internet bandwidth to get access to internet data. So that's the first phase of a testnet. The second phase will be more on the model building, where people can start using a platform to collect data and like build models. So that'll be the second phase where people can get their hands dirty and try out the system, and then that's going to happen in probably next few weeks, right? And then we would want to go look at going mainnet and having the product live so that we can let anyone access this. So those are the milestones to look at. Hopefully, we're able to ramp this up and do it as soon as possible because the space is heating up. There are a lot of people who are getting into this, and we also want to contribute. It's just fun to actually build a product and showcase it to the world so people can test it out and say what their thoughts are. So we want to be as active as possible. So yeah, so exactly.
Super active. So where can people find you online? Because I got to say the Open Ledger community is one of the most active that I've dealt with.
Yeah, you can find us at OpenLedger HQ on Twitter, and you can find me at Ramkumar Tweet. So these are the Twitter handles. Check out our website. It's openledger.xyz. We have some documents on how the product is and how we are building it, and a lot of other information as well. So you can check us out at these places.
Absolutely. And I'll put the link to Ram's social media
Please
and
do
the
that.
link to Open Ledger in the description.